Welcome back to The Living Process. My name is Greg Madison, and this episode is slightly different. It's actually a recording of a panel discussion at the first ever Experiential Existential Psychotherapy conference. It was held in Belgium, University of Leuven, on April 24th, and I'm very happy to say that for the first time, the world has a center dedicated to this particular model of psychotherapy, which is a crossing or a cross-fertilization between the philosophy of Eugene Gendlin, the practice of focusing, and existential psychotherapy. Whether it's more the Yalom tradition or the more existential phenomenological continental tradition, it's somehow bringing the concerns of existential psychotherapy and this deeply experiential way of working together. And this is a panel where we, for the first time together, begin to flesh out what this approach is actually like. And on the panel, you'll see Evie van Merlo, Sophie Verdegem, Siebert van Huren, and myself. And the day was hosted by Claude Emichian, who is well known in the focusing world. And the panel is expertly moderated by Ruth Marion, who asks some very difficult but excellent questions. It's about an hour long, so it's short, but I think it just gives a little inkling of this particular form of focusing oriented therapy. It was a day that we spent together and we explored this very evocative and poignant title, May I Exist? My contributions during the day were in English, but the rest of the time was in Dutch. And it was a very warm and inspiring day. I personally enjoyed it very much. The caliber of the faculty and the students is remarkable. And for those of you who don't know, Leuven University, the presence of focusing at the university has been held by many different people over the years. Now it's Siebrecht, and before Siebrecht, it was Mia Leysen, who many of you would know. So it's a very special place, a special event, and I was honored to have a role in it. I will put links underneath so that you can find out more about the approach. You can find Siebrecht's new book. Finally, there's an introduction to experiential existential psychotherapy. And also there's their training center. So I hope you find it interesting. Welcome back to the Living Process.
Okay, so we're gonna start our final part of the day, this panel conversation. Life is unpredictable. So first Claude should have been the moderator, and then it was Tim, and now I'm here. So let's see how it goes. Thank you all for being here. Siebrecht and Greg we have already seen, but not everyone knows, I think, maybe who Sophie and Evie are. So I suggest, Sophie, that you first introduce yourself a little bit and maybe tell us how the existential has crossed your path.
Hello, I'm Sophie, and at this moment I'm finalizing my PhD with Siebrecht on existential suffering in persons with a long-standing death wish related to psychiatric suffering. So that's also my point of view, my point of thinking, experiencing how existential concerns in myself relate to the questions of a lot of persons I'm also related to in clinical practice with the question of wanting to die. So it's existential in all kind of ways, I think. And most of all, for me, it's about relating. Relating.
This microphone sounds better, I think. Yes. So I'm Evi van Mierlo. I'm in here as the coordinator of the experiential existential psychotherapy training. That's the reason why I'm sitting here. But I'm also, I'm a lot of things, amongst others. So how the existential crossed my path, I followed the training myself in 2017, and I got so caught by it that I would wanted to follow it again and again, and now I'm giving it and I'm following it in its process. It's changing every year, so yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sophie and Evi. Actually, I'm also quite curious how it started for you, Greg and Siebrecht.
You first. Good luck.
That's a very difficult question. I think the sensitivity to an existential perspective or way of experiencing probably goes back to my childhood. And I think there was something in me that was unconvinced by all of the answers I was offered. And I think that was a kind of a guiding impulse in me to begin with. And I think later the openness that, I'm not always open, but the openness that developed from that became something not as a consequence of not being convinced, but it in itself became something I valued. So anyone who offered me an answer, I would protect myself at least partially from that.
Protect yourself?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why?
Because my experience of an answer was diminishing. So why I developed that way, where it came from, I have no idea. If it was the landscape of the lonely prairies or if it was, who knows? I don't know. But I read some existential stuff when I was younger, partly because it was sort of groovy and fashionable. And I was extremely surprised after I had done some postgraduate training, which included some quite heavy psychoanalytic input. I was very surprised to discover that there actually was an existential therapy program in London. So it was at that point where this aspect of my character and my way of having a career finally came together.
And then at some point you added the other E. The experiential.
Well, for me, actually, the experiential came first.
Mm.
Yeah, much, much sooner. So that fit very much the openness that I was beginning to prize. Yeah, I learned focusing, much long before I became a psychotherapist. Yeah.
Thank you. Siebrecht?
Yeah, where to begin? Oh, this is like weird. Okay. I will sit a little closer. That might be more practical. For now. And then I will hide. Yeah, a little bit the same. I think we talked once about it. For me, it also started very early in my childhood because I had like terrible nightmares. I think for 7, 8, 9 years, I had the same dream every night. It was very scary, and I had constantly the feeling that I would die. So there was a lot of death anxiety just in my early life. And I think this made me very sensitive for the topics and for human suffering in general. I think I kind of developed a kind of sensitivity to sense that in other people too. And then I went to the university. First I wanted to study history, but you had to write a paper of 20 pages, and I thought I won't be able to do that. So in the psychology program, they didn't talk about papers, so I studied psychology. And then I came to know about Carl Rogers and Eugene Gendlin at the University of Ghent. And but also immediately about Rollo May and about existentialism. And I wanted to feel that I was really connected to those existentialists, but I didn't feel like I was connecting in any way because it felt too cerebral, like to Hoofdelijk. But I was immediately caught by the writings of Carl Rogers and focusing. So that was when I was around 20. So this is when it started. And it was only later on, after being really at home in the experiential approach, that I started to understand those existential writings. But I had to to translate it. And I think this is where for me, the experiential existential psychotherapy came from, I discovered later that Gendlin wrote a paper about existentialism and experiential psychotherapy, and that those existential, very difficult papers were referring to felt senses or to experiences. And for me, that opened up an avenue to finally understand something about those very difficult writings.
Thank you. We're here at a sort of celebration party for EEP, but how would you explain it to people, each of you?
There was a workshop on that.
Yes, I'm asking you. Sophie, would you like to go first?
No.
Okay, maybe?
Well, it was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was. I did the workshop with 3 other people, and we used the elevator as a metaphor. So you have Hans Egers, who plays the piano, invented the metaphor for us. He was asked in a tall building, "What is EEP? Can you explain what it is?" And it's very difficult between the 15th floor and the 6th floor to say what is EEP in 2 minutes. So then we used the elevator as a metaphor in itself for the micro, meso, and micro levels. That's the levels you want to go to. And the elevator, you see us doing a lot of this. So in EEP, we try to make the different levels communicate with each other by going to the different floors, micro niveau, meso, and macro. And in the research of Giannina Frediani, it's the going between the floors that's really working in EEP. So not staying on one level, but really connecting the different levels and not forgetting one of them. And then you get the washing machine picture of Siebrecht's lecture this morning, where they're all combined.
Elevators, washing machines.
Okay. Yeah.
The yellow, the blue, the red. So then you get the mingling of, if you visit all the floors. We arrived at the 6th floor now, so.
Okay. Greg, what would you reply to that question?
What was the question?
How would you explain EEP?
How do I explain it?
Yeah.
Yeah, in your own words.
I like what has been said. I would say that when you combine those two terms, it changes both of them. That if you take the word experiential, it can mean many, many different things. But if you take it and add it to existential, it becomes something else. I would say it's the invitation for the experiential to become slightly more profound. And it's not just, but it is also this experiential about specific life issues and events. But even when it is that, it also has the potential around the edges to be about life itself. So I think the experiential takes on that tone, which a lot of other experiential therapy approaches don't. I know there's nothing bad about them, but just it's a difference. The existential, I would say the same. That if you take the term existential, it can mean very many different things, and does in the therapy world. It can mean a form of philosophical counseling, basically. It can mean something very phenomenological, but somewhat conceptual. A lot of existential therapy can be quite conceptual. So when you take existential and hyphenate it to experiential, then the existential takes on this much more alive quality with the potential to be something much more than just conceptual. So the two terms, when you add them together, they also affect each other. That's what I would say.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was going to ask, why do we need another branch of therapy? Isn't there enough already? Isn't the existential present in any good therapy?
I would hope. Yeah. I would hope so.
And then why do we need this one?
Okay. Why do we need this one? When I introduce EEP to people, I used to work with prisoners for 10 years, and there's like all kind of people there, which I really like. I mean, from different social backgrounds. And I always say it's about your life. And it's like people understand what this means. And I think the word life works magical because people kind of resonate with the word life. Why do we need EEP? I think it's something about our time now that maybe we need something like an experiential existential psychotherapy. I think this is about what Rogers and Gendlin were talking about and what they really meant with their therapies. I think it needs more time for me to answer this question, so I will wait a little bit.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. We can let it sink in and maybe come back to it. Mm-hmm.
Can I say something? Okay. I would say because it doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. You can find many different forms of even focusing-oriented therapy that do not have this tone to it. And even if it's difficult to describe, you can spot it immediately. There's something in the way of working that feels different, I would say.
Could you make that concrete?
Yes. We are working together. I think it is like the opportunity, and we should not underestimate that, to really open up to those big life questions. And I think it's not for granted. I think it's hard. Also for me as a therapist, it's hard to allow my client to feel that like utter meaninglessness, and for me to be in a process with this experience. I think it's not an easy therapy for therapists. And just because of that, there's many people who shy away or who try to find side tracks not to be involved in this kind of process, which takes away a lot of chances for those clients to grow and to feel really understood. Yeah.
I was thinking that research in psychotherapy shows that other techniques don't really make big differences in the way of outcome. But I think that, and I was thinking also about teaching students EEP. I forgot to talk about that. That's something I also do. I think we help therapists to relate to those themes and concerns in themselves, to have the courage to do that. And in my experience, it's only when you find that courage in yourself, you're in the possibility to help your clients to relate to those themes, and what even comes further is that when you do that, it helps to relate to each other. When you do that together as a therapist and as a client, it helps the relationship between you and your client further.
Okay, thank you. Sophie, you also work in a quite specific work context. How do you translate EEP into your work field?
I couldn't imagine to work with the people whom I'm working with without EEP, I think. Because when people with a long-standing death wish want to talk to somebody, I have the impression that there's always an existential layer that is there, and at the same time, for a lot of those clients, it's difficult to relate to that layer. So I think that, or I experience that with those people, we need a lot of time to understand what is their existential suffering, and to help them to get some language to talk about that layer, and to understand better how suffering relates to their way of being, their way of being with you, how we can, how there can be some living forward, even in those difficult positions. So I think the difference maybe is that first there is a lot of work in relating to themselves, to you as a therapist, to their emotions. There's a lot of co-regulation, and then we can talk about what does it mean on an existential level.
Okay, thank you. Evie, you work in a CGG. How do we implement it in that context?
To me, actually, working in a CGG or a center for, mental health, where people come in 1 hour and then go away again. To me, it's not something different than when I work with colleagues. I do a lot of leertherapie, how do you say it?
Yeah.
Learning therapy or supervision, to me it's the same. It's just about being an authentic human being together with the person that's in front of you, whether it's in a CGG or in a teaching environment. It's about being yourself and being a person among other persons and showing up. So you have to be there to be there. And yeah, presence is really important.
Isn't it at the same time, isn't it something really difficult? Because being authentic, what do you share about your way of being there? What don't you share?
Obviously you don't share everything. It's not about opening up about everything, but you are there as a living body and you show up with everything that's present in there, like the heart beating when you take the microphone. That's also showing up. Mm-hmm. That's showing how you feel on the inside in presence with your client or colleague or with the everybody here. So yeah.
So, Sophie, you say that this is a question you have, that this is maybe a difficulty that you experience sometimes, like what do I share, what do I not share? Sibrecht, what do you still think is difficult?
I'm not sure if it's difficult. I think we share our beingness because we are interacting, even when we don't want to. So I think we are there. Like there is no escape of being there, actually, in the therapy room. I don't know, for clients, you can hide, but you're there, also in your hiding. And the same counts for the therapist. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But you were talking about that it's kind of difficult for a therapist to do the existential stuff, and there is the questions of transparency. Greg, what do you think is difficult about, or maybe challenging, maybe that's a better word, challenging about the EEP approach as a therapist?
I thought you were going to ask me a different question, so I'll answer that one instead. I think I'll answer my question first, and then you can ask yours again.
That's how you do it.
Yeah, I'm a very good therapist. The thing that I was going to say is just, of course, we're thoughtful about what we share and our reasons for sharing. There's no strict rules about what to share and what not to share. But I think it's always important to know what is the impact, how does it change the interaction now that we've said that. And I think to Sibrecht's points, it always is very surprising to me how often my clients know how I feel about something I have never said a word about. That's always very interesting to me. What's difficult about working this way? That was your question, I think. I would change it, actually, to say it would be difficult for me to work any other way. And it doesn't mean that there aren't times that I slip into being more cognitive or behavioral with a client, if that's what seems appropriate at times. But I wouldn't be able to work wholly in any other approach. It would be too restrictive for me. I would have to leave out or have to confine something about myself. So this is, if I'm going to be a therapist, this is the only general way I can be a therapist.
And I think it's also a sign of respect for the client to be there where it's difficult. Because this is where the need is also. And I agree that I wouldn't know to work differently, because it would feel like I'm not doing my job.
Maybe for me, what is challenging and what is most beautiful at the same time, I don't know if you recognize that, is that you're changing all the time while being with your clients.
Okay, thank you. I got inspired by the small exercise that we had at the EEP training, inspired by Jackie van der Goor, actually. So I'm going to ask you if you could take one memory from your EEP practice into the afterlife. What would that be? You can think about it too. Yeah.
I don't know why, but it immediately pops up. I got a snail skin from a client a few weeks ago, and so it's the skin of a snail, but it's
Snail or snake?
Snake. A snail doesn't have any skin, so a snake, and it's like this big or even bigger.
Snail.
It's a huge snail. No, so yeah, he's creating something. He's a painter, and we kind of got into while I was encouraging him to create. He was working silly jobs just to get around, and I really encouraged him to be a creative person, to be an artist. And whilst I was doing that, it was really strange, but I also encouraged something in me at the same time. And now I also became a creative person, and it felt as if the circle was round. With him, it was the snake just popped out of its skin the second before he came into therapy, and he thought, let me bring this. Evie should see this. And he gave it to me. It was still rubbery, so it was still wet from the snake. And I got it, and I was like, wow. And I thought, now he's going to tell me something about what he's creating. And then he said, no, I just brought it. It happens every month. So... And I took it home to, I asked, can I bring it home and show it to my family? And he said, yeah, of course. And the first thing they said was like, so a client brings a snakeskin to your office? Wow, like how or what was the intention? And I thought, I didn't even think about that. It was just so normal to me. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Any of the others?
Yes, but this is more... You put me on a different track, I feel. But maybe it has like a deep meaning. We'll see. I had a client, and he came with his tractor. He was a farmer, and he put his tractor on the side of the city, and then take the bus, because he didn't know how to go with the tractor in the city, with the bus. To the city. And I think we worked 2 years together, and I really didn't know where this therapy was going to. It was like he had a diagnosis like typical personality disorder. So I was in a mental health clinic in Sihihi. And it was a very hard therapy, because he didn't need to talk at all. But I needed to talk, because it was hard to be there week after week. He also had to come to therapy because of the judge, he had to come. And after 1 year and a half, so he was talking about something, and I asked him what I thought a deep question. I don't remember the question. And suddenly I saw him looking up. and back. And then again, I thought, no, really, this work pays off after 1 year and a half of hard work. And I said to him, I will call him Ronnie now, but his name was not Ronnie. I said, Ronnie, what's happening? He said, my heating system broke down. And it was not a metaphor. He really meant it. So I feel like all my courage was flowing away. And after 2 years, we had to finish the therapy because he had to come for 2 years. And you know, he had also in his living room different televisions, and they played all at the same time. So this was his contact with his televisions. But what was remarkable and why it is so special, that is when we finished, he asked me if he could talk to someone because we had to stop, if there was another person he could go to. So, and then he started to going to a different therapist. And so something in those 2 years really happened. I think there was a kind of contact that I could not appreciate because we were very different. But for him, it was life-sustaining. And I think maybe I want to take this memory also because it has a funny part of it.
Thank you. Sophie or Greg?
I was, when you asked the question with a client whom I see till today, at the Riakiro Center, and I started to see her at the center. She came to me. We had some kind of talks, but it was really difficult, and for her it was very difficult to go away at the end of the session, and then she yelled. She didn't want to leave. It was really, it took 1/2 an hour, and it was really difficult for the other persons who came to our center. So we decided with the whole team that it wasn't possible for her to come to us. And for me, I thought, how can we leave that person? She doesn't have any place to go to. So I asked, I really plead, you say that, to my team if I couldn't see her on the street. So I went for some walks, and I do that still today. And when I see her now, last month, when I meet her, she almost always, she's yelling. It's a person with a psychotic disease. She's yelling. It's really difficult. It takes 1/2 an hour till I can just talk to her. And one moment I want to take with me is the moment when we can sit together in the grass in the park, and then she just lays her head on me, and she's quiet, and we're just there together, and I can feel it now. It's really touching. Yeah.
Thank you. Greg?
I find it a very challenging question. I can think of so many people I have worked with over the past decades. I used to work in a medical hospital, so a lot of the people that I worked with there died. And I can remember a lot of them. But I think the person that keeps coming back to me, I wrote a very brief case study about this person. And every once in a while, he comes back to me. He was a young Iranian man living in the UK at university, doing a PhD, very intelligent, very status conscious, came from a wealthy family. And he came in, and the first part of the therapy was very cognitive. It's like he really almost needed to be fathered. And he would go on dates, and nobody would go on a second date. And when we talked about what would happen on the date, it was just he would go to the person and just talk at them constantly. And so we spoke about how to take turns and all of that kind of stuff. And he kind of slowly developed, got a girlfriend, but he had a funny little itch in his stomach, which everybody said was nothing. It was a little growth of some kind that they found, that they were sure it was doing nothing, you could just leave it in, but no, he wanted it out. So they took it out, and they were shocked to find that it was cancerous. But they got it all, there should be no problem. But he went through all of the radiotherapy and chemotherapy and stuff afterwards because he wanted to be certain. He was, I think, about 26 or something. And it came back. I worked with him for, I think, probably about 5 years. And during that 5 years, there was this repeated sort of coming back of this cancer. The prognosis always seemed very good until maybe the last 6 months. He was starting to talk about maybe he wouldn't make it. And he had a session where he was able to focus, and he just let his attention down into his body, and he burst into tears. And he said something that stuck with me. He said, "That's the first time I've ever cried in front of anyone or in front of myself," which I thought was such a sweet thing to say. A little while after that, I was like this. I was away teaching in a different country and got a text message from him. I had visited him in hospital once or twice, and he'd been very affectionate towards me, which really surprised me because he was very standoffish and very slightly kind of macho in person, usually. But I got this text. He wanted to meet with me, and I said, "I'm away teaching, I'll call you on Monday." So on Monday, I sent him a text. There was no answer. On Tuesday, I sent him a text because we were supposed to meet on Tuesday. He didn't answer. Tuesday evening, I got a text from his sister that he had died. And he had reached out to me as the only person he could speak to. And I wasn't there. Yeah. That night, I went to bed and I had a dream. And I can still remember this dream. I don't know exactly what to make of it. Maybe somebody here knows how to interpret it. But in the dream, the part I remember is it was like, you know, in Times Square where they have these big lights where words go around. It was like that. It was like these big lit up sign that just said over and over, "How much longer do you want to live?" That was it. It stuck with me. I feel like there's something about the way he approached death and approached life and then died. Something about that just really made it a question for me. Like life really became a question. Yeah.
Thank you. Now I'm a bit silent. I was going to ask, has working with EAP and existential topics changed how you relate personally to existential topics? It's already a bit, I can feel it already a little bit, but does someone want to add something? Did it change you personally? Maybe I see you nodding.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep myself in the chair and not popping up. So if anyone...
No.
Yeah. How can it not change you? I was when we were talking about the different clients, there's a book called The Client That Changed Me. And as soon as I saw the title, I didn't read it, and I don't know the author, but it's a sentence that keeps coming back a lot of times. Mm-hmm. like, how is this client changing me right now, or is he or she possibly changing me forever? And sometimes they do.
I think for me, there's a lot more doubt about what is life, what is death, what is our responsibility as a person, as a psychotherapist, but also, as a community. How do we relate to that? I'm also busy with the topic of euthanasia. What does it mean that we got people the opportunity to ask to die, to make them dead? So all those things are questions that I'm doubting much more than 15 years ago.
More doubt. Thank you. Okay, before we go to the final part, we would like to give you the opportunity to give to ask some questions to these lovely people, if you want to.
I'm going to sit down first. I think it's interesting to hear how combining the existential and the experiential approach kind of adds a value to each other. But when I think about, I'm pretty new to this, but I also feel some skepticism. I heard in the things you said, you also feel skepticism about maybe the existential part, that it's too cognitive. For myself, I sometimes feel it's hard to reach the experiential thing, and so that's also some skepticism. I can imagine that for patients, there's also a lot of skepticism. So combining the two is maybe adding up skepticism on different levels. How do you approach skepticism in EEP?
Do you mean a client who's skeptical about therapy?
Or maybe specifically about experiencing, about feeling, like bodily feeling, maybe the focusing, or reaching for existential stuff. Mainly that.
The first thing I would say is none of my clients know that I practice experiential existential therapy. I think part of what you're saying is, are there clients who don't work experientially, who work more cognitively? Is that part of your question?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, like I can imagine that CGT is very clear-cut. People can understand, well, how is this going to work?
Yeah.
And I imagine a lot of patients for myself who might be more skeptical towards working experientially.
Yeah. The thing that I would say is just that every client I work with, if you were to observe that therapy and if you were to observe all of them, you wouldn't necessarily think that they belong to the same therapy, because it can manifest very, very differently with different clients. There are some clients who will quite quickly, I have clients in the very first session, they will do focusing without knowing anything about focusing, just the simple invitations that you blend into the dialogue, and some people will just take them and go there. There's other people that I'll work with for like 10 years that would never do that. So then how do you work in an experiential existential way? Well, I work partly because of where I'm at. It's partly my body. It's my way of reflecting, my way of pausing. The kinds of questions that I ask and the sorts of things that I share with them, the way I check with them that I'm understanding them. I know there's a person there. I know there's a process there. Even if explicitly it doesn't get into the room, I know it's in there in some way. But it can look very different with different people.
I will answer your question with a study that just has been done in 2026, so a couple of months ago it has been published. And it was a study with CBT therapists, and I think 1,500 more clients. And the therapist had to fill in a questionnaire of what they thought was helpful. Okay, so there were like 30 possible interventions, which were CBT and non-CBT. Okay, so what the therapists were filling in didn't predict outcome at all. There was no significant like associations between what therapists thought would be really helpful. And then the clients filled in also that questionnaire. And there was only one kind of item, one of the 30 interventions that was relating significantly with the outcome. And it was about meaning and about, I think the item was like, I experienced that my therapist is interested in me and is helping me to find, to search for the meaning about what is important or what is happening in my life. So I think many clients are less interested in what kind of techniques or anything that is happening, right? So I think it's something more of the therapists that we think like, oh, this is important or that is important. The client just wants to feel helped. And it seems that just the experience that somebody is really interested in you, that feels like really helpful. And there was the only item that was predicting the outcome of therapy. And I think also my clients, I think, know, because, you know, you write a book and people read it and then they come. No, they know. But in the past, nobody knew. And also, I'm not saying like, oh, I don't have in my head, we will do this and that today. For me, it's about empathy. And I think focusing, for example, is a kind of empathy, is a kind of way of deepening that empathy and that self-empathy. Yeah.
Thank you.
Another question?
Voilà.
Maybe can I add something? Because the existential themes, you mentioned they're big, but they're also very small. So like now, time passes, it's happening. We don't have to do anything about it. We all can feel responsible or not, and the way a client takes responsibility for its own time, for its own therapy, for its own life, to me that's also working existential. And you see it in the very small things happening. When a client chooses a topic or not, or takes therapy into its hands, or that's also ways of seeing how they manage the existential themes, being connected or not, finding meaning in the therapy every session again or not. So it's not cognitive or really big, it's in the small things, yeah.
To wrap up, could you name one challenge and one opportunity for the future of EEP? A challenge and an opportunity, yeah. Whoever is ready.
I think this is an opportunity, and we created it ourselves. So take and make possibilities. And the challenge is to a lot of the times we have to tell what we're doing, and to me it's about show, don't tell. So the challenge is how can we just show without having to tell all the time, but that it's obvious that we're important, yeah.
Thank Thank you. Anyone else?
Those questions also are difficult. It's incredible. I think there is an opportunity and a challenge that might be the same, and I think what we are trying to do here in Leuven is to understand more and more what we are actually doing, and to make it more concrete so we can more easily make it obvious. And it is there's also a risk because we might lose it while we are studying it. I think today was really important, and I really like how the day came together, and with Greg here with us, because you helped us be grounded and stay grounded in what the ground is of experiential existential psychotherapy, and that is experiencing. So I think the more we go into writing and researching, which is really necessary, it's no joke, but the risk is that we lose what we are trying to understand along the way. Make it conceptual.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can I totally agree with what's been said. The only thing I would add is I think one of the challenges is teaching it. I think it's an approach that doesn't give you a lot to hold on to. And students typically want to know, what is it? And for, year after year to not have that question answered is incredibly frustrating. So I think to somehow teach an approach that really is a way of being, it is very, very challenging. And I think one way of doing it is that I don't know if you guys do this, but to request students have an experiential practice. I think that is one thing that really makes this approach stand out. Most approaches don't have a practice, apart from their, therapy. And you can't be in training therapy forever. So once you've done that, what do you do? So we have a practice, which is a real gift. But I think it is very challenging to teach this. And yeah, it is very challenging because it's almost like you're teaching just tune into yourself and be available, or something like that. And does not seem like enough, especially when you're starting out. Challenge. What was the other thing? Opportunity, or was it? I would say, following from my presentation this morning and workshop this morning, I would say the opportunity is that we're coming into a period of time where what it is to be human is going to become a fundamental question. And I don't know of another approach. Existential approaches, all different kinds of them, I think do go into this territory very much so. But I think more philosophical, theological, and experiential approaches are going to be called upon to help people explore that. So I think that's the opportunity to come.
Okay, thank you. So I think a good conclusion would be experience EEP. Thank you all for today. I think we still have a reception. I don't know the practical details about it, but I think Claude will tell. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being here. And I'll give the mic to Claude.